and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'd like to start off with public participation. If anyone would like to come up and speak to the commissioners.
Can we get this on the thing?
Yep.
I'm Sarah Pilling from Garrett Hill, and I'd like to invite the commissioners and all the residents of Radnor Township to a workshop, a rain barrel workshop on Sunday, April the 22nd at 2 o'clock in the afternoon at the Radnor United Methodist Church, during which time a local Garrett Hill resident, Marissa Barletta, who's a consultant to the Philadelphia Water Department, is going to tell us what are rain barrels, why we should have rain barrels, and how they can help both the township with some of its stormwater maintenance, but they can also save money. It's free. It is co-sponsored by the library, the Garrett Hill Coalition, and the Radnor Conservancy, and 4 door prizes will be given, consisting of rain barrels from Do It Best, and those who attend will get a certificate and will be able to buy rain barrels at Do It Best for quite a discount. So I invite all people to come. Please let your constituents know. We'd really appreciate it. And I think it'll be a very informative afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve, did we ever, I know we were going to do a demonstration 10 years ago with rain barrels. Did we ever get any rain barrels to do that? Did you ever hear anything about that?
I did not.
Yeah, I don't remember. I was supposed to get one. I guess we never did it. Any other public participation? Yes, thank you.
Hi, thank you, and good evening. My name is Kate Long, and I'm a resident of Aldwin Lane. I'm here tonight to address our grave concerns regarding PECO's installation of the high-tension electrical transmission lines directly behind our homes on the SEPTA Route 100 property. The residents of Aldwin Lane are concerned with the health and safety of our families, as well as with the associated negative impacts to our quality of life and our property values as a result of this installation. Our specific questions include, regarding health and safety, the new wires will have a higher capacity. The peak capacity will increase by 30%. The associated electromagnetic fields are unknown, but it is a safe assumption that they will be higher as well. In addition to the wires being replaced of 138,000 volts, we have 2 sets of 34,000 volt lines, 2 to 3 sets of 14,000 volt lines, and several sets of local distribution lines. All of these wires are within 20 feet of our homes. It is a mess. Where is it written that PECO or SEPTA have the right to impose electromagnetic fields on residential homes and potentially harm the health of the residents? What is Radnor doing to protect its residents? This will also be an incredibly loud and long process, running morning to night with very large equipment, diesel trucks, electrical generators, water, drilling chemicals, soil and rock cuttings, cement trucks, lifting cranes, construction trailers, staging areas, large and very heavy traffic on the street going from one end to the other, dumpsters, trash and debris removal, not to mention the trains coming through between 4:30 in the morning and 2:30 in the morning. What are the plans to help mitigate this process for the residents? How will this be a guaranteed safe process? How will we hold PECO accountable? The issue of drilling and blasting is top of mind, given the issues with the blasting last week at the Agnes Irwin School. We could feel the blasts on Aldwin Lane. The soil behind our homes is mainly comprised of rock, and there is little to no room to work, as the poles need to practically abut the train track area due to the steep, narrow slope between the poles and the tracks. How will the blasting be regulated and/or measured to ensure no damage to home foundations or gas lines? What will be the impact on the train tracks themselves, and how would residents be affected should SEPTA have to come and make repairs? Is Radnor Township equipped to manage any potential associated disasters as a result of this work? If something does happen, are residents listed on PECO's insurance policies and on all of their contractors' policies? Regarding the process, rules, and regulations, I ask, what role does the township play in this? Have the board members walked along the SEPTA Route 100 to understand what is proposed and what it will look like? What does the Board of Commissioners know about this project, and what systems are in place to ensure PECO complies with rules and regulations? In the past, we have found debris, wires, insulators, and burned wood behind our homes after PECO has done work. Where is the documentation with the township regarding this work? I realize that PECO had to file with the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission, but how does PECO work with the township? Does Radnor have a copy of the agreement between PECO and SEPTA regarding the lines, line maintenance, and proposed construction on SEPTA property? Are construction permits, payments, engineering oversight, and taxes required by the township? Regarding the long-term effects on Radnor Township, have environmental studies been required for existing conditions and future conditions? The first poles went up in the 1950s, and much has changed since then. These new structures will be there for at least 50 years. What does this mean in terms of the future landscape of Radnor Township and the safety of its residents? These new metal poles will be at least 75 to 105 feet, which means they'll be at least 15 feet higher than the existing wooden ones, will most certainly have a negative impact on home prices for those homes along SEPTA Route 100, not just due to safety concerns, but to aesthetic reasons as well. Is Radnor ready to accept this as the way of the future, or are we here to preserve the integrity of our township? Lastly, and most importantly, I ask you to consider both recent events and proposed future events related to this densely populated area of Radnor Township. The construction and blasting at Agnes Irwin, the 4-alarm fire at Bloomfield Mansion, the proposed expansion of Villanova's campus and associated enlarged footprint within Radnor, and now these power lines. It is too much change with too many risks, with little to no reward for the residents. Yet again, our quality of life, safety, and financial well-being are at the mercy of a behemoth non-tax-paying institution. In the end, the health, safety, and welfare of the residents of Radnor Township should be paramount, and I respectfully ask that you, as our elected Board of Commissioners, partner with us and be our advocate as we seek the best resolution for Radnor with PECO. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin, do they have to get any permits for all this work?
Where there is construction work that falls within our purview, we do require permits. We have done that on some of the other SEPTA projects. So yes, I believe Steve is going to be meeting with them in short order to get a better scope of what the proposal is.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Can you give me an idea exactly where this project is along Aldwin Lane?
Sure. If you're approaching Aldwin Lane from South Ithan and you come up to the stop sign and you can make a right and turn into the SEPTA parking lot, and there's a footbridge over the SEPTA tracks. Right at that footbridge, that is where the poles will be constructed. So if you make a left there and you walk behind the properties of Aldwin Lane, that is where the poles will go. There's already existing, I think there's 7 wooden poles, and they're going to be putting in 5 new metal poles. So they run right behind our yards. And remember, Aldwin Lane, the properties actually narrow as you edge towards Lancaster. So we are at one end. Our neighbors at the other end are very, very close to the tracks.
The purpose of the project is to upgrade the SEPTA power capacity?
No, it's actually a PECO project that they are performing on SEPTA property, and PECO has an easement, we understand, on
Okay.
SEPTA property. This is a PECO project.
So, and it would run, these poles would be installed along the tracks for how long stretch of?
All the way down from where the parking lot is, all the way down to Villanova Road and Wooded Lane behind those homes.
And actually through Garrett Hill, where
Yeah.
the slope
Oh, the other way?
project was,
And it
all
ends
the way
in Bryn
down.
Mawr.
Oh.
I believe
It's a
the project-
major
okay.
upgrade for PECO in that whole
Well,
corridor.
Aldwin Lane, it's
Yeah.
behind the homes on Aldwin Lane on the
Right.
right-hand side as you go down.
And I assume, Bob, that we'll handle this exact same way we did the SEPTA project, and we'll have very tight controls on them.
Yes, and I'm glad you bring that point up. Last week, based on the Longs, and they've done an excellent job of informing me, giving me a lot of information, reached out to Ralph Brown, PECO, our governmental affairs representative, who we had asked about some type of meetings, the information, I think, for all of us to find out what's going on. And their plan is to reach out to each individual resident first to explain what the process, what's going to take place, and then we're going to create a neighborhood community meeting to actually go through this and have a lot of the questions asked and put out there for PECO to be able to respond. So as of last week, that was their plan, to reach out. So as soon as they reach out to the individual residents, and we'll ask that we stay in touch, and that as soon as we get that information, then we're going to go ahead and schedule that meeting before any work is done, so everybody has a full understanding of what's taking place.
A big problem, as you probably found out in your research, is the Pennsylvania public utility laws completely trump local authority. And that's a situation actually has been made worse recently when they, in the gas line bills, where they've taken, for gas and drilling and that stuff, have taken even local zoning out of our hands. But SEPTA, which is also a public utility, I think that project, except right in the beginning, really went well, and they were very cooperative working with us as far as the working hours, the use of generators, access of equipment, and those kinds of things.
Okay,
So
well-
that's the same kind of role I see us taking on this project.
Okay, because just being a resident there for many years, and my parents have lived on Aldwin Lane for over 35 years, our experience with both PICO and SEPTA have never been particularly excellent. It's very circuitous when you contact them in terms of getting work done even just behind our home. I know that they just recently came through and they took down a lot of the vegetation in anticipation of this work. There is still a lot of litter. We find people behind our homes all the time using it as a toilet, students back there, people who are at that train station behind our properties. It already feels incredibly unsafe. And our concern is that with this build, not only are we going to feel unsafe because of the power, but just all of the people back there 24 hours a day.
Right.
Well, John, you're right that the public utilities law does supersede our local laws, but we still have, I think, the right to expect cooperation from
Oh,
SEPTA
absolutely.
and PICO. And, I mean, they have homes too, and they're affected by third parties coming into their neighborhood to do things. And I would hope that Steve and Bob, we can go the extra mile here to help make sure that PICO and SEPTA do the absolute best they can for the residents to make this project have as little impact as possible.
We will definitely do that, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? All right, John, approval of the minutes, Board of Commissioners meeting of a notice of executive session. We had an executive session this evening where we discussed matters of litigation and personnel. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes
I move we approve the minutes.
for March 26th? Second?
Second.
Any commissioner comment? Public comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I abstained because I was not present.
All right. All right, it passes 5 with 1 abstention. Okay, John, would you like to do the proclamation for Days of Remembrance?
We have a proclamation for Days of Remembrance, and I have here joining us tonight is Ms. Susan Mark. She's the Director of Institutional Advancement for Barrack Academy. In the past, we've had people from the student government here also, but unfortunately, it's their spring break. Anyway, Susan, would you join me at the podium, please? This is a proclamation of the Board of Commissioners of Radnor Township for Days of Remembrance, Sunday, April 15th through Sunday, April 22nd, 2012. Whereas the Holocaust was state-sponsored systematic prosecution and annihilation of European Jewry by Nazi Germany and its collaborators between 1933 and 1945. Jews were the primary victim. 6 million were murdered. Gypsies, the handicapped, and the Poles were also targeted for destruction or decimation for racial, ethnic, or national reasons. Millions more, including homosexuals, Jehovah's Witnesses, Soviet prisoners of war, and political dissents, also suffered grievous oppression and death under the Nazi tyranny. And whereas the history of the Holocaust offers an opportunity to reflect on the moral responsibilities of individual society and governments, and whereas we, the people of Radnor Township, should always remember these terrible events of the Holocaust and remain vigilant against hatred, persecution, and tyranny, and whereas we, the people of Radnor Township, should actively rededicate ourselves to the principles of individual freedom in a just society, and whereas the Days of Remembrance has been set aside for the people of Radnor to remember the victims of the Holocaust, as well as to reflect on the need for respect for all peoples, and whereas pursuant to an act of Congress, the United States Holocaust Memorial Council designates the days of remembrance of the victims of the Holocaust to be Sunday, April 15th through Sunday, April 22nd, including the day of remembrance known as Yom HaShoah. Sorry, it's in italics, so I can't even read the letters. April 19th, 2012. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Commissioners of Radnor Township does hereby proclaim the week of Sunday, April 15th through Sunday, April 22nd, 2012 as days of remembrance in memory of the victims of the Holocaust and in honor of the survivors as well as the rescuers and liberators, and further proclaim that we as citizens of Radnor Township should work to promote human dignity and confront hate wherever and whenever it occurs. Resolved this 9th day of April 2012.
I'll move the approval of proclamation. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes 6-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have an application for a waiver of room rental fee by the Radnor Soccer Club. Can I have a motion?
A motion, we approve the waiver.
I second.
Any commissioner comment? Public comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes 6-0. Next is the Garrett Hill Implementation Committee's 2011 Annual Report.
Good evening. Rick Barker, 920 Lewis Lane, and also serving as the chair of the Garrett Hill Implementation Committee. Good evening. Once again, there's a document on your desks that was an attachment referenced in this report. So I'll just explain that right now. Again, since it was referenced in the report, I thought it was important to include it for your purview. And in order to synopsize our report, I will simply read selected excerpted sentences. Firstly, the GHC would like to welcome the newly elected Ward 1 Commissioner, James Higgins. The GHA looks forward to working with Commissioner Higgins and the entire Board of Commissioners. Thank you all for your service. Secondly, as requested in the GHIC's 2010 annual report, the Board of Commissioners adopted a resolution that incorporated the Garrett Hill Master Plan into Radnor Township's 2003 Comprehensive Land Use Plan on October 24th, 2011. Sharing the same status with the Comprehensive Land Use Plan means that future Garrett Hill ordinances will follow the standard of being generally consistent with the Garrett Hill Master Plan, and it will be subject to 10-year periodic updating along with the Comprehensive Land Use Plan. We have a special section in our report this year entitled The Villanova Redevelopment Update. Villanova University published a campus master plan in October 2008. Last December, the university invited local residents to a presentation that outlined proposed residence halls and related projects to be sited on the Lancaster Avenue parking lots. Briefly, their plan includes the following: residential housing for approximately 1,160 junior and senior undergraduate students. The proposed residence halls may or may not impact the number of student housing rentals within the township. However, they will increase the overall population of our township and will certainly provide a large change in township demographics. The proposed height of these buildings will vary between 4 and 5 stories. Currently, the building height in Radnor Township institutional districts is limited to 3 stories or 38 feet. Villanova is proposing building setbacks of 45 feet on Lancaster Avenue. Currently, Radnor Township requires a 75-foot setback. Approximately 17,000 square feet of university-operated student-centric retail, including university bookstore, convenience store, and bistro. A retail expansion of this magnitude may adversely affect many of our community's established, locally owned and operated businesses. Parking structure to accommodate 1,800 vehicles. The proposed structure will stand approximately 55 feet high, which exceeds the Radnor Township height limit by 17 feet and 2 stories. Performing Arts Center will generate its own concomitant parking and traffic concerns. Villanova will be seeking substantial zoning waivers from Radnor Township since they are not entitled by right to build these proposed facilities. It is this committee's belief that before us now is a historically unique opportunity for a collaborative effort to ensure that the ultimate redevelopment scenario falls within the overlapping set of what is best both for the residents of Radnor Township and Villanova University. The traffic burdens that would be generated by the magnitude of the proposed expansion may be dramatic, far-reaching, and difficult to mitigate. If the congestion along Lancaster Avenue increases in frequency and duration, the spillover onto Conestoga Road will make it even more difficult to traverse our community. The impact of Villanova's plans on Radnor Township will be unprecedented. These plans promise to provide the greatest development impact on our township and our communities that most of us will experience in our lifetimes. The GHIC believes that the basis for any waiver of zoning standards that Villanova receives should be community investment to alleviate the significant adverse impacts of their proposal. Our committee puts forth the community-generated Garrett Hill Master Plan as a guide to implementing any Villanova investments in our neighborhoods to ease the impact of their development plans. Also, care must be taken not to allow development to occur in a piecemeal fashion that would not be allowed to occur as a whole. I move on to the regular body of our report. Grants and funding. The working group aims to identify and secure support for Garrett Hill Master Plan implementation items in coordination with Radnor Township. The GHIC coordinates with the Garrett Hill Community Enhancement Trust, the GHCET, a 501c3, whose mission is to find and manage funding to support improvements in the Garrett Hill zoning district, neighboring community, and Radnor Township. The GHC has received grants and donations amounting to $1,650. I'll move on to the Gateway crosswalks and the SEPTA rock slope section. And I think what I'd like to do is to ask staff if they're willing at the end of the report to give us a brief update on the status of the SEPTA rock slip, as we call it. We'll move on to the park improvement section. Projects and improvements made at our 2 Garrett Hill parks in 2011. A flagpole and light were installed at Emlyn Tennell Park due to the efforts of Commander Marty Costello, American Legion Bateman Gallagher Post, number 668, Nick Santalari, Steve Norsini, our Director of Public Works, and the Radnor Township Public Works and Parks employees. Thank you to all. Trees at Emlyn Tennell were trimmed and maintained by the Township employees, and several heritage trees and stumps at Clemacone were removed. Streetscape and facade improvements, no report. Parking strategies, no report. Consideration of historic preservation and/or design criteria. The focus of this working group continues to be on the research of historic areas within Garrett Hill, the area's property owners' concerns and issues regarding preservation, and Pennsylvania state guidelines. What's been accomplished in 2011? Research group has met quarterly. A smaller working group met more frequently to research and compare neighboring townships' historic preservation ordinances. A special meeting was held March 22nd, 2011, with group members and Michael Lefebvre, Historic Preservation Planner for the Bureau of Historic Preservation at the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission. The group worked with area property owners to uncover a comprehensive list of concerns and issues regarding preservation. And we had a special section in this report. This is what the appendix refers to as it's the prioritization worksheet exercise. The prioritization worksheet describes the 14 Garrett Hill Action Plan recommended projects. This, the master plan was adopted on July 1st, 2008, and each committee member was asked to rank their understanding of the relative importance of these projects. They used a ranking system of 1 to 14, with 1 being the highest priority. Worksheet is attached, and I'll refrain from reading those, but these can be found on in our report. It'll be on the web. And in conclusion, as we move forward, clearly the greatest challenges to confront Garrett Hill, as well as the greater community of Radnor Township, will be counterbalancing the adverse impacts of Villanova's proposed development. This will involve ensuring that any development proposal is consistent with the comprehensive land use plan and the Garrett Hill master plan. It will also involve on deciding on what basis zoning exceptions should be granted and what countermeasures must be instituted to affect the anticipated adverse impacts. These include, but are not limited to, view sheds, noise, traffic congestion, and pedestrian safety. Committee and citizen participation, as well as Section 280-137 and 280-145 of our zoning ordinances, will guide these decisions. This committee cannot overstate the importance of community involvement in this process. Thank you.
Rick, can I just ask a few questions briefly?
Certainly.
On the prioritization worksheet, it's a 14-item list. Item 10 and 14, I believe, are completed. The Garrett Hill Enhancement Trust was created. And also the Garrett Hill Design Standards, I believe, were completed as part of the zoning changes. Is that correct?
The Garrett Hill Enhancement Trust has been established. However, its work is ongoing.
I understand.
And this is why it was included. However, the Garrett Hill Design Standards, as referred to in the Garrett Hill Master Plan, are a body of standards that may be created in the future to supplement the Garrett Hill zoning ordinances. Some design standards, of course, are included in the zoning ordinance, but the Garrett Hill Master Plan refers to this as a separate action item.
Okay, I appreciate that. I think it would be helpful in the case of having implementation committees, that we take this 14-item list, and when it comes time for the township to do our planning, our 5-year planning, especially our capital planning, that this list be used as a reference at every step of that process to make sure that we focus on the right things. So I appreciate you putting that in here.
And this was the reason why the committee felt it was important that it be incorporated into the Garrett Hill Master Plan be incorporated into the comprehensive land use plan. And I don't know if anyone has any more questions. If I may, if you're willing, Steve, to give us a little rock slope update.
One thing, Rick.
Sure.
The park, John Ogle, the park signage got done this year too, right? This past year?
I believe it did.
Last year, yeah.
Was it last year?
Or was it the year
We
before?
did new park signage at both Clemacrone and,
It was last year.
it was last year.
2011.
Right.
Wasn't it 2011?
Yeah.
So we've, incrementally, we're getting things done. I appreciate all the help from staff on getting those things done and getting the grant money lined up even to get those things done. But we clearly have one comfort station that is in dire need of replacement. That's been put out to bid, and tonight we'll be looking at that again. And then we have the need for a new comfort station at Emlyn Tunnel. which is a heavily used park that doesn't have any comfort station. We have a porta potty. So certainly, those items are going to be high priority. And I guess we can hear now about the rock slope, something, again, that we've been working on for years, and we hope to move this ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner Fisher. As the board knows, David Lay, our township engineer, did receive an extension on that rock slope project. We've also contacted PICO and other entities to see if they'd be willing to supply funds to make it a nice gateway as you come into the township. And that's we still haven't heard back on that from everybody to see if they're willing to kick in or not. And the latest turn I received was through our solicitor. SEPTA has some concerns with the stormwater pipe that exits the Rosemont Business Campus. So I'll be out there trying to investigate that to see if it is on their property and if it does affect that. But right now, until that's done and we find out about some future funding from other entities other than just the grant, that's where the project stands.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Committee reports, personnel and administration.
I'm going to take that. Kevin's not here. So we have an announcement of 2 board vacancies on the Design Review Board. Please send your letter of interest to the attention of Robert Zinkowski, Township Manager, Radnor Township, 301 Ivan Avenue, Wayne, Pennsylvania, 19087. That's it under personnel.
Just a quick one, Bob. What other open positions? I think still
The
library. right?
Library, correct.
Yeah,
Right.
library. Somebody's leaving April 12th.
Okay.
Okay. Public Works and Engineering, Jim?
The first item is the authorization to award a contract number B12-002 for seed and fertilizer for our township athletic fields.
You're going to do that one last?
Pardon?
You're going to do the first one last? Is that what you're trying to
Did I
accomplish?
skip ahead?
We'll have Bentley first.
Oh. Well, I'm already into this, so I'm
Oh,
going to
yeah,
continue.
go ahead.
Steve Norsini, would you care to give us a little explanation about this?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Higgins. The Township Public Works Department annually requests bids for seed and fertilizer for use on our athletic fields. The bids went out via Penn Bid e-bidding service, and the lowest qualified bidder was Genesis Turfgrass, Inc., and we would recommend and request that the Board of Commissioners award the contract to Genesis Turfgrass in the amount of $25,389. I'd just like to add, that's a maximum for all the seed and fertilizer. We would possibly buy up to that, but it's for whatever we actually need. And that number is probably about half of what the contract was for last year, and that reflects the reduction of the need for these products with the cancellation of the school grounds maintenance agreement.
Thank you. I will make a motion then for the Board of Commissioners to authorize the award of contract B12002, turf products, seed and fertilizer to Genesis Turfgrass in the amount of $25,389.
Second.
Oh, John Nagel seconded? Okay.
Steve, there is one sentence in your write-up that could you explain that to us? It says, none of the bidder's specifications for organic biostimulant met bid specifications and therefore will not be purchased under this contract.
Yes, sir. Organic biostimulant is an item that's used on our fields every other year, and this would be the second year it would be due for that. The specification we put out was not met by any of these 4 companies, so we are requesting that we not purchase it from any of them at this time. So we would not, it would not be purchased under this contract as stated. We will look for alternate means to purchase that.
Prior to the time when we all became more concerned about chemicals being placed on our fields, what would we have used in lieu of organic biostimulant?
All these items, well, the seed, I think, is very self-explanatory. Even the fertilizer is an organic product. Over the years, there's been many different products you could use, same products many people could use on their homes. Some contain chemicals, some do not. There's actually a product out there that's made from sewage treatment plant sludge. So there's all sorts of items you could use. We would always have used some type of fertilizer back in the day, whether it be 10 years ago or not. The fact that nobody met the specification for the biostimulant is really not a big deal for us. If we can find one that meets our specification, we may ask to go out to bid for that. If not, we'll adjust accordingly.
Okay. That sewage treatment sludge fertilizer is called Milorganite.
That's correct.
It's made in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I've been using it for 30 years.
Yes.
Good stuff. Okay.
All right, that's,
I have no more
okay.
comments.
Any other commissioner comment, public comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 6-0. Next item, Jim.
What's the next item? I missed that. Oh, I'm sorry, I did skip over the Bentley subdivision. It's not in the big book, it's on the agenda. It's the resolution, Bentley Homes, actually Boathouse Realty Associates Limited Partnership, number 2012-34. Our subdivision number is 2011-S12. It's a preliminary application for approval by this board, and the subject is to subdivide 4.63 acres into 10 residential lots with a cul-de-sac, and the address is 1430 County Line Road in Villanova. So I think we have the applicant present with us tonight, and I'm not sure of the procedure that we follow here, but maybe you should guide us, Bill.
Well, Dave, have they agreed to all the conditions? We don't have them in front of us, but.
Well, let me address it, Mr. Spengler. Let me give some background to this.
Okay.
The applicant was in front of the board at the last meeting, and what's in front of you is a preliminary plan approval. There's no resolution because the staff met with the applicant on Thursday. We were trying to work on what conditions of approval would look like. We were trying to work on some of the waiver requests and discuss those last Thursday. So with Friday being a holiday, there was the normal procedure would be we would have a written resolution prepared. Now you have from me a set of conditions that we discussed last Thursday. I've informed the applicant and their counsel what those conditions are, and I think some of them may require some discussion, at least in terms of sidewalks fronting that property. But let me just put in front of the board what the conditions were as of last Thursday that the staff was recommending to the board. A proposed motion, and you have to act one way or another absent an extension because the time runs out tomorrow. But if the board was inclined to approve this, the conditions would be compliance with the last Gilmore letter, which is January 6th, 2012. Construction, and this was part of why we had a meeting last Thursday, of a new township welcome sign, a flagpole, some landscaping within Unkerford Park. Also, there's some existing streetlight poles and some sidewalks within that park that would be replaced or repaired. I think we would leave that up to Mr. Norsini to make a determination as to the poles. The total cost of that would be capped at $40,000. That was, I think, a result of the staff discussion and discussion with the property owner. The other conditions would be to execute development, financial security agreements, and then compliance with all other township, state, federal rules, regulations, ordinances, standard condition. There's also, within the Gilmore letter, a series of subdivision modifications which would be approved, and they're marked in the Gilmore letter as either RW or W. And there were 2 additional saldo modifications which we identified last Thursday. One had to do with common driveways, section 255-27I6, common driveways between 2 or more single-family dwellings, and the other one had to do with whether or not to require additional right-of-way along both County Line Road and Lancaster Avenue. You have a general standard in your subdivision ordinance for all of your streets, roads, whether township or state roads, and recommended rights-of-way. County Line Road, I believe, Steve, is a township road, and Lancaster, I know, is a state road. Is that right? So you have it. So they're the 2 additional saldo modifications. They're the conditions that we discussed. I know the board may have some questions about some of those conditions. We have looked at some other plans that have been filed. I think it's important to recognize that the plan in front of you has a lot of modifications on it, but that's the result of the Planning Commission and the neighbors' input that directed that plan to be revised. I don't know how many revisions there were, but I know there were at least a couple revisions from the original filing. So that's what's in front of you, and I know you have some questions. Mr. Bentley's here, Mr. Kaplan's here representing the landowner, and that's really all I have on this.
John, in your 4th condition, you cite the Gilmore letter of January 6th, and the words you used were, in addition to common driveways waiver, additional right-of-way along County Line and Lancaster. What do you mean by additional right-of-way?
I think the plans, and Steve might be able to address it, but my understanding is the plans do not show currently what would be future right-of-way. We have a legal right-of-way, but there's some additional area that would be a future right-of-way that the plans don't reflect.
Correct. The plans as submitted are not offering any additional right-of-way than what is out there currently.
So on County Line Road, Commissioner Higgins, you have the existing legal right-of-way, which I assume half of that's in Radnor, half of that's in Lower Merion. And
Well, the existing legal way, ours is on the one side of the street. That's all we're concerned about.
right, the center line of the road.
Yeah.
And then on Lancaster Avenue, you have existing legal right-of-way. We have an ordinance provision that talks about additional right-of-way. So that additional right-of-way is not shown on these plans.
So he has to provide that additional right-of-way according to our ordinance, or is it optional, or what are you telling us?
Well, we can talk about the clarity of this particular section of your subdivision ordinance. But on Lancaster Avenue, it basically says as to, and I believe that would be a major collector, Steve, 80 feet, I think. Lancaster's a major collector. It's an 80-foot right-of-way. But it talks about is recommended by PennDOT. Since it's a PennDOT road, we have had no contact with PennDOT. We don't have any recommendation from PennDOT. We don't know what PennDOT would want, if anything, out there in terms of additional right-of-way. So it's an issue to some extent whether or not you want to take that right-of-way for the township for some future use.
Well, I mean, if you have 80 feet right-of-way, isn't that enough? And what would we use more right-of-way for?
Well, we do not currently have 80 feet.
Oh,
Right.
We would only have 60 feet, so they'd need to give us an additional at least 10 feet to meet the ultimate right-of-way.
They would have to give, to get to 80, they had to give us 20 feet?
Well, it's
Just 10
half
on,
width, so it would just be 10 feet.
just 10 along the frontage of
okay.
this property.
So you're saying on a state highway, they should have 80 feet?
Yes.
And you're saying under our ordinance, they're required to give us that additional?
Well, I think that's what John's alluding to. The wording isn't such that it says required. especially along Lancaster, it defers to PennDOT's discretion on whether that right-of-way should be provided.
And then on County Line Road, the right-of-way is how much?
The current right-of-way,
Existing in the Radnor Township side?
it's our side 30 feet, so it's 60-foot total, 30-foot half width.
Okay, and we're asking that to be increased how much? On the county line?
Well, what's required under the ultimate right-of-way would be 80 feet,
On County Line Road also?
both, yes.
Yes.
Because County Line Road is also a major collector. So it would be a significant increase. It would be from, you say it's 50 feet? Right, so it would be 60 to 80, so it would be another 10-foot increase.
Let's hear from the developer on the right-of-way
Actually, can I have
issue.
another?
Let's just do the right-of-way issue. Let's
Well,
discuss
on the
that.
right-of-way, I just, currently, Dave? Currently, on the design, the front yard setbacks of the properties on County Line Road, are they right up against I'll say the 60-foot right-of-way?
I mean,
So if we were asking for 10 more feet of right-of-way, that would diminish or reduce that front yard setback, or have to push those properties further?
yes, I mean, if you would measure from the ultimate right-of-way, it would push them 10 feet further back
10
into the
further feet?
property.
And if we were to do that, would that cause, by shifting the building envelope, would that cause us to be out of compliance on the rear yard setbacks or side yard setbacks on the properties closest to the cul-de-sac?
Well, it might just limit the size of the unit, the size of the home that can be built there is what it would do.
Okay, so this, we can hear from the applicant, but I'll just tell you, I'm a little uneasy about this process. I've never had a preliminary plan in 5 years in front of me that the conditions weren't typed up in front of me, and that the drawing wasn't amended to show what we're adopting. So, I'm just going to put it out there right now, I'm going to be voting against the adoption of this preliminary plan. So, I have a lot of concerns with the relief that we're granting. I feel that there's too much relief being granted in almost every area of this plan. The cul-de-sac is smaller than it needs to be. The road that leads to the cul-de-sac is shorter than it should be. It's not as wide as it should be. The right-of-way is not as wide as it should be. We're giving up right-of-way on that entire road and cul-de-sac structure. The cul-de-sac is, as drawn, excuse me, I don't have my reading glasses on, but has a 30-foot radius, and I believe our code requires at least a 40-foot radius, maybe even a 60-foot. I'll have codes give me clarity on that. But one of the concerns I have is I don't think it would be fair to this process to approve this tonight because we don't know what we're approving. So from the township standpoint, you know, once you make preliminary approval, we don't have any other choice but to make final approval or not. So we really need to have a good drawing in front of us, one that makes sense and that the commissioners will fully understand what we're approving. So again, we don't have any written conditions in front of us in their totality, and we don't have a drawing that represents or depicts these changes. So I can't imagine how we can move forward with this. That's my opinion. The rest of the board will have theirs. But if you would like to speak to that, you may.
Yeah,
I'd like to hear your opinion.
My name's Mark Kaplan, and I represent Mr. Bentley and Bentley Homes. And Tom's here. Mr. Fisher, let's talk about the rights of way, because that's not proposed to change.
Well, don't talk to Mr. Fisher, talk to all of us.
Excuse me.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr.
All right, thank you.
The plan has been approved or recommended for approval by the Township Planning Commission. The plan was vetted through the Township engineer's process. We accepted all of the conditions and comments of his January letter. With regard to rights of way, with regard to Lancaster Avenue, it's a state highway. There's only one person who sets the width of a state highway, and that's the Secretary of Transportation. There's I've been through this many times. The state highway law is clear. The township does not set an ultimate right-of-way on a state road. There is only one right-of-way on a state highway, and that is as set by the state.
Well, how do they set it, like now, if they wanted to enlarge it? They have to pay for it?
They'd have to come in and they'd have to pay for it and they'd have to enlarge it. The other thing that my experience, Mr. Chairman, is PennDOT doesn't want one additional inch of property to be responsible for or to take care of. So in this process, there has never been a question about conveying additional right-of-way along Lancaster Avenue.
All right, I'll accept that. Go to County Line Road.
County Line Road is really the same thing. There has to be some causal connection between the township demanding private property as a condition of approval. And I believe your ordinance says that we'd be required to give you additional right-of-way if it was needed, and it's in the waiver letter that was, or the modification letter. It's only given, and it's only required if there's some traffic congestion reason, if there's some reason that is caused by our development of 10 houses that would require the additional right-of-way. Mr. Fisher, I'm sorry, I don't mean to just kind of, that's private property. We have a right to develop our property without having to give up private property to the township. There is no justifiable reason for you to say to us on a road that is 60 feet wide from one end to the other end, that is a condition of exercising a right to develop our property, that we should give you more right-of-way. Now, from a practical point of view, if we had to move an imaginary line 10 feet farther onto our property, it would have no effect on the subdivision. So there has never been a discussion, and if you want to hear it from Tom, because Tom has been the one who negotiated with the township residents, who negotiated with the Planning Commission. We had a plan when I first got involved in this, and we can argue about whether the engineers are right or not. But I saw a plan with 16 lots, multiple driveways coming out on County Line Road, and Tom elected not to submit the classic by right plan. He said, Mark, I'm going to go and I'm going to go meet with the neighbors. And that's what, a year ago, Tom? A good year ago. So this plan that is here has been vetted through a neighbor process, multiple meetings with the Planning Commission. And I, quite frankly, thought the only issue here tonight was whether somebody wanted sidewalks or not along one road or the other. None of the neighbors want sidewalks. And what was suggested by staff, and we had a very amicable meeting, was, okay, you're not going to put in sidewalks. We'd really like Ungerhurst Park cleaned up a little bit. We'd like a welcome sign so that you know when you come down through Rosemont that here's the beginning of Radnor Township. That was asked of us on Thursday. I know that there is a drawing that Joe Arsati and Pat Stewart prepared. Tom reviewed it on Saturday, sent it to Steve Saturday night, Sunday night, whatever it was. And when I spoke to John Rice this morning, he told me that you had that plan. Steve Orsini came up, when Orsini came up with an estimate of what the sidewalks would be of about $40,000. We think that's if you did it public bidding, but he said, contribute the $40,000 and do it in the following way. Give us a new sign, do some landscaping, put in a flagpole. Those are the primary items that Steve and staff asked for. We've done that drawing. We're probably over $30,000 to do all of that. If there's more money, Steve will tell us, more money out of the 40, Steve will tell us whether he wants the sidewalks fixed or one or two of the lights. We'd like to move on. There's no reason to change the plan. It's been vetted, it's been reviewed. So I'm a little bit surprised to hear somebody say.
Just to clarify things, I think the majority of the board is agreeable with that. The decision that we need to make is whether we're going to put a sidewalk on Lancaster Pike or whether we're going to do the improvements in Unkerford Park. That's the decision I think that the majority of us
Bill,
want.
Bill, I think you're mischaracterizing that.
Yeah,
You may
I
wanna
have a
pause on
little,
that.
I'm a little surprised and confused as to why the right-of-way from the county line side is coming up tonight as a waiver. I mean, it reads to me, the statute, which I have in front of me, that the basic dimensions that are required for a major collector, it's 80 feet. It's no, and then there's a subsection, too, that reads, we, the Board of Commissioners, can ask for additional right-of-way on top of that for traffic, secure safety from fire, panic, whatnot. It seems pretty clear in the statute that it's 80 feet, and that's the basic dimension that's required. So that is something that you need a waiver from, or if it's not going to affect the subdivision at all, just give the right of way pursuant to the statute.
Well, I don't want to play lawyer, but I'm going to play lawyer. There are 3 United States Supreme Court decisions and a Commonwealth Court decision that say that's the taking of private property. The cases have been refined by the most recent United States Supreme Court decision, and it said, and that case says that that's the imposition of an unconstitutional condition unless a municipality, a government, can show a causal connection as to why you need that right-of-way, why we are creating a problem that you need that additional right-of-way to solve. That's a taking, and it's an uncompensated taking. I don't want to sit here and talk about constitutional law, but the bottom line is that that's not right, it's not fair, it's not constitutional, and if you're going to take our right-of-way, then I guess you should pay for it, because you're taking it for a public purpose. We're trying to do the best that we can. That road, as long as I can remember, when I went to Villanova Law School in the 1960s, was the same width. Why?
Well, I guess my confusion is why is this coming up tonight? Why, on the eve of passing a preliminary?
And the burden is on the applicant when they submit a preliminary plan to have all the requests for waivers stated as such on the plan. So, John Rice, could you please, we have an attorney speaking to the board. I am not an attorney. I need to have some counsel here. John, will you please give me some advice into what's being said here?
The waivers, I mean, the issue of taking additional right-of-way is an issue. I'm not going to get into a debate with Mr. Kaplan about that, whether you have to pay it or not. But just practically, you take additional right-of-way when you want to do something with it. You're going to have a turning lane there, you're going to have a sidewalk there, you're going to put utilities there, you want to widen the road, or you have some future plans to do that. So just to take it for the sake of taking it, there's a practical consideration here. So if you want to do any of those things, they're not accessing Lancaster Avenue from this development, and they'll make the argument that since they're not doing that and it's a PennDOT road, we can't even require that additional right-of-way. So, but if you want the additional right-of-way, you should have some reason, some basis. Mr. Kaplan causes it a causal connection, but usually it's taken along the frontage of a subdivision, additional right-of-way. It's fairly common, but you usually do that if you have some plans to do something in that right-of-way in the future.
And there is a relationship here, though. As I understand it, the egress of this road and cul-de-sac is less than the required distance from the other intersections. And then, you know, and I don't have the list of waivers in front of me, but it makes intellectual sense to me that if we're waiving requirements under our code in terms of distances between this egress and an existing other, you know, another road coming into county line, then maybe we should be looking at expanding the right-of-way, because maybe we do need to put a turning lane in there to keep the flow of traffic. But my biggest concern is not what was just mentioned tonight, which should have been mentioned sooner, but the right-of-way of the new road and the new cul-de-sac is less than what's required under our code.
Well, that's as a result of in-depth negotiation with neighbors and the Planning Commission.
Which, for all intents and purposes, the negotiations with the neighbors are negotiations with lay folks who do not know the zoning code of this township.
All right, John, this right-of-way issue came up tonight. Can we just waive this? I mean, I'm not concerned about it. So
It's listed, I mean, they submitted a letter with all the modifications. All the modifications are listed in Dave Lay's January 6th letter, which was in front of you at the last meeting. The memo I sent to you that you got had the two additional ones. One of them was this right-of-way issue. You can vote to approve all these modifications or vote to approve none of them or some of them. I mean, it's up to the board. If the sense of the board is to approve the modifications, they're all in the Gilmore letter except for the two that I identified.
And the two, how do we dismiss those two? We have to waive those also, or?
They would be part of an approval, correct?
Okay. All right.
Well, this does have a large amount of waivers and modifications, but I understand that they have all arisen from the process that came through our Planning Commission and with the neighbors. I think it makes for a slightly awkward subdivision plan, which is why it's a little hard to get our hands around it. But all of those issues aside, because I watched the meetings and I have heard from some of the neighbors that I do think that this applicant did a good job of trying to take feedback from the neighbors and make it a better subdivision that would be more palatable to the neighbors. The issue that I have is the sidewalk. And we spoke about this the last time you were in front of us. I did visit the site and walk the sidewalk where the sidewalk would, and I'm talking about the sidewalk on Lancaster Avenue, not on County Line or within the subdivision. And with some of my colleagues, we went and walked the site. We walked where the sidewalk would go between the stone wall and the traffic lane of Lancaster Avenue. There is plenty of room. It's completely doable. And as I said at the last time this came up, this is in every one of our planning documents a goal of this township to have pedestrian connectors between public transportation, between parks. This would be an excellent one. You could start at one end of our township. This would bring you a large way. Once you get to Villanova, there are sidewalks there now, and who knows what there's going to be when if Villanova gets redeveloped, which could bring you all the way up to, almost all the way up to our high school, which could connect you to our Martha Brown's Woods when we get a trail through there, which could connect you to our trail. I mean, this is what, from 30,000 feet, what we're trying to do in this township. This is an excellent opportunity to make some headway there. It is doable. I don't want to waive the sidewalk requirements on County Line and within the subdivision without having some assurance that we'll have a sidewalk put in on Lancaster Avenue. And I understand that improvements to Unkerfer Park were considered as
Trade-off.
a trade-off. I walked Unkerfer Park today. The sign looks beautiful to me. To me, I would rather see a sidewalk on Lancaster Avenue. I know that there's neighbor opposition to it. There was neighbor opposition to our trail for many of the same reasons, and now it's one of the greatest assets in our township. So I'm trying to see the forest through the trees here for the benefit of our whole community, and I feel strongly that I would like to see that sidewalk put in.
Is the applicant willing to put a sidewalk on Lancaster Pike instead of the Uncle Park improvements?
We're willing to do it. We don't agree with it, but I'm here to get Tom an approval. Tom's here to get an approval. Yeah, it was a trade-off.
All right.
We're not in love with it. We'll have to design it so that it can go in. I'm not sure I totally agree with Commissioner Schaefer. Tom has we have all of the pictures. Yeah, could you do it with a lot of grading? But that's why Steve's number was $40,000.
Excuse me, if I may, Commissioner Spengler, just to make sure the board understands, I don't mean to interrupt Mr. Kaplan, but before it goes too far, this issue came up actually several weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I just want the board to know that it wasn't all sidewalk for a gateway to Radnor Township. That number was a sum of sidewalk, reduced pavement, because as Commissioner Fisher had said, the road is now smaller, and reduced granite curb. So the sidewalk was only a small portion of it, especially the piece on Lancaster Pike, because the rest of the sidewalk is what was not being installed in the subdivision itself and on the street. So I just want to make sure the board knows, in my humble opinion, it's not an either or. It would, if the board wishes to have the sidewalk on Lancaster Pike, perhaps a slight reduction in whatever is done in the park should occur, not a full trade, so to speak.
May I just say this? We're trying to take apart a puzzle that's got many pieces.
Yeah.
It's like a sofa. You push it down over here, something else comes up. Yes, we have a reduced cul-de-sac. We lost 2 lots. So we lost 2 lots to get that. So if we're going to have a scale here, I would suggest that in order to go through the process and to satisfy the neighbors in the planning process, we lost much, much more than $40,000. So what I thought that we were discussing when we came and we met with staff is, well, quite frankly, I was told nobody wants the sidewalk. So if we're not going to build the sidewalk, and we'll do our fair share to the township, and we'll do the park thing. Okay. I don't know, and this is sort of switching the hat, but I don't, is there really a majority that would consider?
Yeah, I can answer. There's been a huge disconnect between this board and our staff. As good as our staff is on everything.
No. Jim,
The fact, let me finish, please. The fact that there were discussions Thursday and the word was passed around that nobody wants a sidewalk was a misstatement of reality.
Well, I think, Commissioner Higgins, I think the nobody that Mr. Kaplan's referring to are the residents primarily and the Planning Commission.
Yeah, I didn't mean to cast aspersions.
Well, we had a meeting here 4 weeks ago, and it was quite clear that there was significant support on this board for sidewalks on Lancaster Avenue.
Jim, what we need is we need a motion to approve this plan with sidewalks and nothing in Elm Grove Park. That's what we need a motion for right now. So if you'll make that motion, we'll see if we get a second, and we'll have a discussion about it.
But Bill, there's so many more elements of this that are not in writing right now. So how can we possibly approve a preliminary plan without
else is not in writing?
Wait, excuse me.
I'm sorry. We normally have a preliminary plan approval, conditions in front of us, in writing, verbatim. That's it.
Yeah.
We don't have that right now.
John, are you comfortable that we have enough information that if the board passes this with all the, approving all the conditions to the Planning Commission, the letters and everything that you discussed, and the only addition we agreed to, instead of doing the Unkerford Park, we do the sidewalk on Lancaster Pike? Can we approve that tonight? Are you confident that we would?
I don't get a vote, first of all, but.
No,
but
as our solicitor.
let me just, what I heard Mr. Kaplan say is that it's not and Mr. Norsini say, it's not an either or sidewalks or Unkerford Park. I think that if the board wants to approve this tonight, the motion would be, as I described it earlier, because you have a plan and you have the Gilmore letter, and that ties into the plan. And then the Lancaster Avenue sidewalk, and whatever improvements can be done up to $40,000, which is the number that was discussed last week. So if that sidewalk's $10,000, I think there's some improvements that can still be done in Unkerford Park in addition to the sidewalk. So it would be all those elements.
All right, does the applicant agree to have a figure of 40,000?
Well, wait a minute, I have some questions. Excuse me. Mr. Kaplan, excuse me, I have some questions for our staff.
Sure.
David, total, how many waivers are required in order to get this plan through? Total number.
Yeah, I believe, no, once we put it on the table, you can talk all night. Yeah.
There's 11 waivers. There were 9 in my letter and then 2 additional ones in John's memo.
And as far as the width of county line, I mean, I could see a real need for there being a parking lane on county line. We were up there today, and that you're going to add 10 houses, and they're narrow cul-de-sac houses and driveways. Where are visitors parking? They're going to park on county line, which is a major collector, as we've said. So, you know, I could see the need for the extra width.
Well, the
Well,
extra
John-
width, you're talking about on the cul-de-sac? Or
No,
you're talking about along
on county line.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think that was discussed at the Planning Commission, and the feeling from the neighbors and from Planning Commission was that widening would take away from the, you know, bucolic nature of the area.
Okay, thank you. And I completely agree with Commissioner Schaefer's comments about the sidewalk.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just to add, in, you know, the issue of disconnect, the staff did look at this previously, and in my opinion, I don't think a sidewalk is safe to be on that area of the street, because currently on the south side of the street, you have the same location between Lowry's and Barleycone there, that again, too, because of the way the sidewalk sits immediately adjacent to the street, with the curb being very small. But here, to my understanding, is you're going to put a sidewalk in from County Line Road all the way up to North Lowry's Lane, is that correct?
No, no.
So where's that sidewalk going to?
He's just going to put it on the
Lancaster, but you're going to take
He's
it
going to
from
put it on
where,
the
from what
property that-
point to what point?
Just the property that he owns.
So we're going to have a sidewalk that goes to nowhere.
Just like we have a sidewalk goes to nowhere in front of the park. That's how we get to a sidewalk to
okay,
somewhere. That's how we get to a sidewalk from somewhere, by putting it in here and there.
I'll just say that I recommend strongly against the sidewalk, based on safety, but that is the, respectfully, I do, and that's the board's decision to be able to make that. So I just
Bob,
want to.
there's nothing perfect in our world. You've made, your email today said that the sidewalk on the south side of Lancaster was unsafe. Well, if it's unsafe, it ought to be closed down and made safe. But that's not a reason not to build a sidewalk here.
Jim, we don't have to debate the sidewalk between the manager and the commissioners. Let's just make a decision, okay?
All right,
He made
can I-
his opinion. You don't have to debate it with him, okay?
Can I please?
I know, but let's not get into a debate about it.
I know we're going to hear from, I assume the neighbors are going to object to this, but our job is to balance interests here. We have several neighbors, last time appeared here, were almost vituperative in their comments towards this board's position on sidewalks. And I'd like those neighbors to understand, we have an obligation to protect interests of individuals and the public as a whole. It's a balancing act. We're legislators. And in this case, in my judgment, as Commissioner Schaefer has said, we have a splendid opportunity of building a sidewalk bridge from Unkerford Park almost to the high school. There'll be 1 or 2 interruptions at Lowry's Lane where there's private property and not the university. I get requests all the time in my ward to have sidewalks installed, and we can't always do it because of our financial situation. But here we have a splendid opportunity to do it. Sidewalks protect people. They allow people to enjoy the environment. They reduce air pollution. They reduce warming effects on our atmosphere. So I think in this case, the need is there, and we ought to go ahead and proceed in that fashion.
The issue is, will the developer agree to spend $40,000 for sidewalk and improvements at Unkerford Park, total $40,000?
Yes.
All right, can I have a motion then?
But wait, there's no There's no, you don't know what the cost of the sidewalk is going to be. We walked it today. It's 220 yards. You're not going to build a sidewalk for $40,000.
Can we build a sidewalk for $40,000?
Commissioner Spengler, what I would request is that the applicant install the sidewalk at their cost and still do $40,000 worth of improvements to the park.
No.
There's additional savings that weren't even calculated in that number in reduced utilities, or there could be some smaller number. I know a square foot price for sidewalk, but there is additional work installing that on Lancaster Pike because of the slope, the proximity to the wall and the curb. So it's going to be more expensive than, quote, normal sidewalk.
Well, why don't the motion state that they'll put the sidewalk in on Lancaster Pike, and if there's any monies that are not spent under $40,000, they'll be used for Unkerford Park. If the sidewalk costs more than $40,000, they'll have to put it in. They have to put the sidewalk in. But if their costs are $25 to put in the sidewalk, they'll have $15 for Unkerford Park. If the costs are $55 for the sidewalk or $80 for the sidewalk, they have to pay for the sidewalk. Okay? If that's what you guys want to accomplish, this is the way to do it. We can debate it all night, you know.
But
Well, I'm with
recognize-
Commissioner Schaefer. I'm not too hung up on Unkerford Park. I'd much prefer to see the developer help us with the sidewalk.
Then why don't we just put something on the table to discuss? Why don't you make a motion that the developer put in a sidewalk on their property on Lancaster Pike, and that any costs under $40,000, they will make improvements on the Unkerford Park. If it's over $40,000, then there will be no improvements on Unkerford Park.
But we are waiving, there are 11
No.
waivers.
Well, the Planning Commission has spent months and
The
months
Plan
debating those.
Commission advises us.
The Planning
they
Commission
don't
has
vote.
advised us on that.
Bill, let's hear Commissioner
Yeah,
Fisher. He's
the only
got-
comment-
he has the floor. Let
Yeah,
him
if you
speak.
put it on the table, then we can
Actually,
discuss it all
I want to
night.
yield my time to Commissioner Curley because he has yet to get to say a word here.
So I have one question before. Did we ever determine what a by right plan would be for this? I know there was some discussion. We weren't willing to accept the applicant's position that 16 was a by right plan.
A plan was submitted, but we identified several areas of relief, two of which we discussed tonight were those additional waivers. That's where those waivers came up from, were items that I noticed as a similarity between both plans.
Okay. So,
No.
all right. So, I mean, I have discomfort for the plan. I'm willing to accept the position on the right-of-way. It sounds reasonable. But the other 11 waivers still trouble me very much. And the problem that I see is that, or part of the problem is that I think by allowing those 11 waivers, what it allows us to do is overdevelop the property, put too many houses on the property, direct them inward so as to separate them from, they're neither directed to the street nor to an attribute of the landscape. So for me, that's a problematic aspect of the plan. I would also rather see the sidewalks. I'm similar to the other commissioners. I'm not, you know, the improvements at Unkerford Park would be valuable, but I would much prefer to see sidewalks. I'd prefer to see them on both sides. If there's a compromise that would put them on one, I'd be willing to entertain that. But my biggest concern is that those other 10 waivers seem to be so significant in their impact that they've allowed us to produce a plan that I think is generally inconsistent with what our comp plan tells us we should be doing. So I'm very troubled by those aspects of
May
the
I
plan.
respond?
Yes. I think there's, first of all, a big problem with the nomenclature. They are not waivers. Virtually all of them are modifications to your requirements. And the municipality's planning code differentiates between zoning requirements, for which you need a variance, in which you have to go to the zoning hearing board, and the saldo requirements. And it says very specifically that we have the right to modifications where there's a hardship, where we propose something that solves the problem just as well as the intended engineering requirements. Saldo requirements do not control density. You control density through zoning.
You make the lots so big, you make the lots side yards, setbacks, you control density that way. We have a plan that shows 16 lots. Let's say that's wrong. We're down to 10 lots. We have a cul-de-sac plan that meets all of the requirements that was presented. Nobody wants that plan. We don't like it. It's not as good a plan. So if the message that you want to send is to developers in an economy that looks like it's coming back, when you come to Radnor, come in with a by-right plan and don't worry about what the neighbors say. And don't worry about the Planning Commission, because somebody who, after you spend a year, somebody's going to say to you, well, I don't want to approve this because I think maybe there are too many waivers. Well, Commissioner, that's not fair, and I'll finally let Tom speak for himself. But he's put a lot of guts into this, and a lot of time, and a lot of money, and quite frankly, over my advice a year ago when I said to him, Tom, get a by-right plan. Because if you don't have a by-right plan, you're going to be standing up here one night, and somebody's going to say to you, well, I don't think you can get that many lots. So if that's the determination and the message that you want to send, Commissioner, you're doing a marvelous job. If you want to have an interactive development process where a guy like Tom Bentley, who's been building on the main line for 40 years, comes into the township and says, I want to cooperate, then you'll vote for this plan. They are not waivers. That's a wrong word. They are modifications. Why do we have a modification of the site distance? Because the land is built that way. Because the slope goes down towards Villanova. Because Tom put the driveway where one of the neighbors asked him to do it, and then David looked at the site distance and said, well, really, from an engineering point of view, it's not a problem. Why is it not a problem? Because between where the driveway is and where this supposed site distance is, there's a stop sign. Are you really giving us something? Is that something that we're getting? That's something that we're entitled to. So I'll let Tom talk because I quite frankly don't know. I don't know where we are. But you have a process and you have an obligation under Pennsylvania cases to not wait until the last minute and to not throw this at us at the last minute. You have an obligation, a township has an obligation under the wrong decision to come forward in the process early. And there are a number of cases that have thrown out this.
We understand all that, okay?
Well, okay. Tom, I mean, I don't know where we're going here.
Just one of the things. I did not want to have so many modifications on the letter, and waivers, modifications, whatever you call them. Your staff is, you have a good staff. They're tough. You know, they know what they're doing their job. They wanted to have every little thing on there because they didn't want to be in a situation where the township would be liable later on, or somebody would say, hey, he didn't do this or he didn't do that. So we're talking like 5 feet. We have to have a waiver because we're 5 feet off on the site distance. And we went over this at length with the Planning Commission, all this stuff. I mean, I had a plan that I wanted to build that was just all driveways. And by the time I got to the end of your process, I know I could have gotten approved. I've been doing this for 40 years. You can say what you want about by-right plans, but I know I could get 12 lots with driveways. I could get it approved. You can't stop somebody who owns property from coming out onto a road. You can't make me do a cul-de-sac. I don't think. And we went along with the Planning Commission, and we went along with the neighbors. The Planning Commission said, be creative. You know, so I put a $300,000 cul-de-sac in and lost 2 lots. Okay, the net loss to me is probably like about $500,000. And now I'm at a point where I'm just hoping I'm going to make money on this project. And I think that the sidewalk on Lancaster is going to cost a lot more than $10,000. You know, and I think the 40,000 thing that you recommend is eminently fair. I think it's reasonable. You know, and I told you in the beginning, if you want sidewalks, I'll do the sidewalks. But all this talk about the waivers, all of that stuff, we've been through that. I mean, and you represent, your township represented to me that it was okay. I did engineered plans. I spent a lot of money based on what the advice was I got from your staff and the planning commission. I'll stop.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question of Steve Norsini? On the Unkerfer Park improvements, what are the most important?
Commissioner Schaefer, we thought that that was, I consider that a gateway to the township as you're exiting Lower Merion and you're entering our township. And our current sign is just the standard white and blue park sign with a small pole. I guess the biggest improvement there was to have a sign befitting Radnor Township as a gateway sign with whatever wording the board would, you know, welcome to Radnor Township or Radnor Township. And like it is now with Unkeefer Park in smaller letters. That was probably the biggest dressing of that park, was that and the flagpole coming down through the part where as you truly enter the township, it could be seen.
All right, could I get a motion?
I'm going to go ahead and make a motion. All right. I move to grant preliminary approval of this plan with all of the waivers that are in the David Lay January 6th letter and with the waivers that are outlined in subsection Roman numeral 2 of John Rice's memo. So those two as well. However, with the condition that sidewalks are installed on the entire length of the property on Lancaster Avenue in accordance with our SALDO requirements of sidewalks, and that the sign at Unkerfer Park and the flagpole at Unkerfer Park are improved. That's my motion.
Could I just, before, if there's a second, there's a couple other elements to what's in front of you. One is complying with the Gilmore letter, development agreements, compliance with all other ordinances that were in the memo that you got from me. So, I mean, they're your boilerplate. I just don't want Mr. Kaplan saying that some of these other things, I know he would never do that to me, but some of these other things weren't.
So my motion should reflect that the entirety of the January 6th letter is not just the waivers, the entirety.
Right. I added the additional items.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, does the applicant agree to that condition or not? He does. Okay.
Is there a dollar amount in your?
No. Board discussion? Public discussion.
No, I have some comments I want to make. I need to get some engineering information. Dave Lay, what is the requirement under our code for the radius of a cul-de-sac?
For the constructed radius of the cul-de-sac?
Yes.
It's 40 feet, and they are meeting that. They're not requesting a waiver from that requirement. They're requesting a waiver from the required right-of-way for a cul-de-sac, but not the constructed.
Okay, so the drawing I have shows a radius of 30 feet, what appears to be a 30-foot radius.
They did have a plan that had 30 feet, but it was increased to 40 feet with the revised plan.
Okay, and the right-of-way on that would need to be, under our code, 60 feet?
Correct, and that's where they're requesting a waiver to allow 42 feet.
Okay, and I have an issue with that. You know, I'll just bring this up. We just had a really bad fire near my district, where the only access to the home was a private lane. And I believe as a result of that, it was very difficult for the fire apparatus. There was probably between 10 and 15 trucks that responded to that call, and only 2 of them could be situated adjacent to the house. And that property is destroyed. And here we have a plan where we've eliminated the right-of-way requirements on this short Street and the cul-de-sac, and we have a property, lot number 6, that is being served by what looks like a private driveway. Far removed from the cul-de-sac, far removed from Lancaster Avenue. There's virtually no direct access to that house if there were a fire, for ladder trucks. I mean, it's a very difficult thing. And I know the fire marshal looked at this, but I look at this plan, and it just tells me, why would we do this? Why would we allow a house so far removed from a cul-de-sac? And I know, there's an engineering explanation for this, but, go out to the fire scene and watch this house burn to the ground because the fire trucks couldn't get to it. So, I'm honestly very frustrated right now. I'm frustrated that the Planning Commission didn't take all of these waivers into deeper consideration. I'm frustrated with engineering that we allowed these waivers to progress to this point. I'm frustrated. And I'm sorry if I'm coming off angry, but this really boggles my mind that because we waive on the right-of-way, now the front and side yard setbacks can be fit in place.
John, we did a study with fire.
Let him speak.
You know what?
Speak. Don't say it.
Go grab a couple ladder trucks and try to fit them down that lane. No, really, try to get them there and try to get those ladders extended above that house. In the MPC, it specifically states that the power we have is to make sure that health and safety is upheld, and in particular, that fire apparatus can get to a scene. We're not the experts, but when you look at these plans, there's a reason why we don't like to see, and why our code doesn't support, more than one home on a lane. We really don't want that, okay? So we have a cul-de-sac with 4 homes being directly serviced by it, and then we have a 5th home all the way off to the side, and yet the cul-de-sac is smaller than it should be. So to me, this is not good planning to me. And who am I to say this? Well, I've read the municipal planning code, and I hear things like, these are not waivers. Well, if they're not waivers, go to the zoning hearing board, because guess what? You have to prove hardship on each and every one of them. Okay, so if you're trying to reduce the front yard and side yard setbacks, you need to show hardship. There is no hardship here. So, you can give me that dumb look, but there's no hardship here.
Please.
No, I don't like it when someone looks at me like, don't be condescending, because there is no hardship here. There is no hardship.
Any other commissioner comment?
I have
Okay.
one thing. Dave, can you just summarize a sentence or two, the 9 waivers that are in your original memo that we don't have before us, but we did have last time, and then describe the impact of the second waiver that John has added regarding the common drive. Just elaborate on that second one.
Okay, just going through the requested waivers, the first one had to do with the 500-foot, showing existing features within 500 foot, which is what we discussed before. They'll be working with Steve Narsini to provide the required information. They are requesting
Okay, I understand that one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Move on,
Okay.
please. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but.
That's all right.
Or I did mean to interrupt, but please move on.
They requested a waiver for the width of the right-of-way for a private road. They are requesting a waiver, obviously, for sidewalks along the private road. They're requesting a waiver on the cul-de-sac length. It's required to be 250 feet. The proposed is 180 feet. They are requesting a waiver from the right-of-way for the cul-de-sac bulb. It's required to be 60 feet. They're providing 42 feet. And again, there's another section which refers to the right-of-way width for a private road. It's 60 feet required for a local street, and they're proposing 40 feet. At the site distance, there's required to be 600 feet between 2 intersections on the same side of a street. They are proposing a separation of 550 feet. And there is a requirement for the proposed driveways on lots 1, 4, and 5. And then there's another site distance waiver required for the driveways on County Line Road, which was probably a modification. They're required to have 275 feet of site distance. They're going to have slightly less than that.
And then elaborate upon the one that John Rice is recommending for today regarding the common driveway. What's the significance of that?
The common driveway, that has to do with having a driveway between two buildings. We've had some discussions about this, and the determination we came up with is they need a waiver to have a driveway between two proposed homes.
Okay. And one last question then. If all the right-of-ways were they required either a modification or a waiver, would that push the building, would that relocate the buildings? Are the buildings in what would be right-of-way?
I mean, as they're currently shown, yes. I mean, but that's not to say if the yards were pushed back, they couldn't.
They would still be relocated just in another portion of the
Correct,
property.
right, correct.
Very good. Thank you.
Public comment?
My name is Carol Boslett. I am one of the, quote, happy neighbors. I live at 1421 County Line Road, across the street from the proposed development. I would like to clarify for Mr. Kaplan that the neighbors aren't all really pleased, happy campers about this 10-house reduction. I think everyone knows that the 16-house initial plan was simply a maneuver in order for Mr. Bentley to appear to be a good guy and reduce it because of neighbors' objections to first 12, and then we still weren't happy, so then he's down to 10. It is our feeling that going down to 8 would make a much easier plan for him. It would eliminate a lot of needs for these waivers, and it would reduce the intensity or the density of the development, reduce the amount of automobiles parking, and allow the roads into and driveways to be proper size. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening, everyone. My name's Tom Going. I live next to Carol Boslett at 1425 County Line Road, and I've lived there for 18 years. Carol talks about 8 houses. We have 10 on the plan now. I was part of most of the meetings with Mr. Bentley and the neighbors, and I must say, we did at one point say to Tom, 16's too many, 12's too many, do 10, see how it comes out. Tom did that. So even though she's my next door neighbor and she likes 8, I must say that we did say 10 to Tom, and he came up with 10. I think that the plan is pretty good. Again, I live right across the street. Tom's listened to my concerns. I think he's listened to most of the concerns of the neighbors. Instead of just having a cul-de-sac in where none of the neighbors, nobody on our side of the street can interact with the people across the street, Tom listened. He put houses along County Line Road where they'll front on us, we'll front on them, we'll be able to interact and things like that. So by and large, I think, again, would I like 8? Of course I would. But we did say to Tom 10. I think Tom worked pretty hard to come up with a good plan that the neighbors can live with. Sure, there are sidewalk issues. I don't really care one way or the other. But I think all things considered, considering our type of neighborhood where it is residential, we'd like it to remain residential. We didn't want a Walmart or a Villanova dorm or anything like that across the street. I think that Tom's done a pretty good job of trying to work with the neighbors. And although, again, I'd love to see 8 houses there, as a neighbor across the street, 18 years there with a plan to live there for much longer, and although I'm in Lower Marion and can't vote for any of you, I'd ask that you support this for Tom. Some of the other neighbors may disagree with me, and obviously they're welcome to speak, but I wanted to get that out there.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Jim Schneller. I haven't made any comment at this point, but I do use the street. I use County Line at least 3 times a week. And I wanted to point out that should this be valuable to you, the sidewalk link from Unkefer up County Line on the Lower Merion side of County Line is about 10 feet from being complete to Lowry's Lane, at which point there is, I believe there's there's a sidewalk on the western side of Lowry's back to the Pike. And that 10-foot missing sidewalk on County Line is all that's missing. You see joggers popping around the last 10 feet and going around trees to get to Lowry. If you had 10 more feet of sidewalk there, there would be that continuum from Rosemont, down County Line, down Lowry's, back to the Pike.
Anyone else? A question?
I'd like to ask
Okay.
one, if Mr. Kaplan could ask his client to address Commissioner Nagel's issue with parking, guest parking for the people that are going to live in this subdivision.
Yeah, there's always a lot of talk about parking and guest parking, and we did a study to show how many cars can park on the cul-de-sac, and one of the reasons we did the cul-de-sac, and I agreed to spend $250,000 or $300,000 extra for the cul-de-sac was I thought it would create more of a neighborhood. There is room for some parking on the cul-de-sac. I think we had like 6 or 7 cars. But, you know, what happens, I mean, everybody says, well, where do people park? Well, if anybody on County Line has a party, all they have is a driveway. And all we have is a driveway, but we're adding a cul-de-sac. So if there's a party, people park on the street. You're allowed to park on the street. There's parking allowed. And so, you know, and actually parking slows down traffic. So, I mean, if people are parking along the side of the street, traffic will slow down in that area. So the side of the street is where they park. And that came up, and everybody's talking about parking, and I said, well, everybody else has got the same issue. When they have people over, you know, they park on the street.
While you're up there, can I just ask I walked the property today, and there were several really, really large birches in particular, beautiful old trees that are tagged. Does that tag mean they're coming down?
They're beeches.
Did I say birch beech? Are they coming down, or are they staying up?
The ones in the front of the property, we're saving a lot of them. There's one probably about 30 or 40 feet up from the low side of the property that's about 10 feet in.
Yeah.
It's a stunning tree.
Right.
We moved a house, we moved a driveway to save that tree.
Okay.
And
So that's staying?
we've been able, I mean, a lot of the site is maples,
Mhm.
and we're going to cut almost all the trees down on the site. I don't want to deceive you.
Mhm.
But we've managed to save the trees around the perimeter, and along the front of County Line Road, which will be particularly useful to the neighbors, we're going to save a lot of the big shade trees. And we're moving sewer lines and water lines. I mean, we've done a lot of work to try and save those trees.
And the property at the very back towards Lancaster, where there's like a creek going through.
Right.
Are you just cleaning that up, or what are your plans for that part?
I don't think we're allowed to touch that. You know, it's,
just
we
gonna
would
leave
probably
it
clean
the
up
way
the
it
dead
is?
wood,
Mhm.
but, you know, it's you know, anytime there's any kind of a water feature, we just stay away from it.
Okay.
The other thing is, my lawyer thinks I talk too much, so I'm just going to be quiet. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
So let me just clarify the motion that we're voting on.
I'm glad
This-
you're going to do that. 'Cause
Yeah. So my motion is to approve the preliminary subdivision plan with compliance with with the entire correspondence from Gilmore and Associates dated January 6th, and with the 2 additional waivers in the John Rice memorandum of April 9th in subsection Roman numeral 2, with the 2 conditions that a sidewalk will be installed the entire length of the property on Lancaster Avenue in accordance with our SALDO, section 255-37 governing sidewalks, and that improvements to the Unkefer Park sign and flagpole will be made in accordance with the plans that we received today.
Does that cover it, John? Okay. And John Nagel, you second that?
Yes, I'll second that again.
Okay. I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes 4-2. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, Jim, you have some comfort stations?
We have a matter of needing to reject bids for comfort stations at Cowan Field, Emlyn and Emlyn Tunnel Park, and Clem McCrone Park.
Will you make that motion?
And I will make the motion that we reject those bids, and we'll ask Mr. Norsini, our Director of Public Works, to explain
All right, let me get a second first.
what went wrong.
Do I have a second? Second to that motion?
I'll second it.
All right.
Thank you.
I can help you if you need to.
No, I'm sorry. Switching plans. Thank you, Commissioner Higgins. The way the bid was structured was we had a base bid for the comfort station, which is just the bathrooms, one at Cowan Field, and then a larger item where it's the bathroom plus a canopy portion. And that was split up that way for 3 parks, as you had noted: Cowan, Emlyn Tunnel, and Clem McCrone. Our bids are done on pen bid, an e-bidding system. And aside from filling out what is the bid sheet with your prices, there's also an upload of specific documents that are required with the bid. The lowest bidder, who was the apparent lowest qualified bidder, at first blush did not upload all the appropriate documents. We conferred with the solicitor, Melissa Kahn, our bid coordinator, and because of that, that lowest bid could not be accepted. So based on that, I'm requesting that the board reject those bids and allow us to turn this around very quickly and go back out to bid.
Public comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes 6-0.
The next item is the turnaround on the 3 parks, Cowan Field, Emlyn Tunnel Park, and Clem McCrone Park. This is to authorize the Public Works Department to receive bids for comfort stations at those 3 parks, and it's project B12003A. And I will make the motion to allow Public Works to receive those, to prepare bid documents and receive bids.
Second.
Commissioner comment? Public comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes 6-0. Thank you, Jim. Parks and Recreation, John?
We have before us a series of resolutions that we'll vote on one at a time, but these are all related to the $3,000 limit on our contracts that in the past, historically, the commissioners wouldn't even seen these. So we'll go through them one at a time, and if there's any questions, Tammy can answer them for us. Resolution 2012-42 is to authorize the township to work with school district to provide transportation services for recreation and community program departments summer 2012 Radnor Day Camp program. I move.
I'm going to recuse myself from this vote because my husband's company sells a small amount of equipment to Radnor Township School District.
Do I have a second?
I will second.
Second?
Second by Jim Higgins. Commissioner comment? Public comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes 6-0. 5-0 with 1 abstention.
Resolution 2012-43, authorizing the township to enter into agreement with Brandywine Learning Center for 3 Harry Potter camps for the summer 2012. I move that we approve this resolution.
I'll second it.
Second. Commissioner comment? Public comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes 6-0.
Jim, I'm disappointed.
Don't be disappointed. Don't let's sleep. Don't.
Resolution 2012-44, authorizing the township to enter in an agreement with Theater Horizon for 5 theater camps for the summer 2012. I move the approval of this resolution.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Lane, second. Commissioner comment, public comment, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Resolution 2012-45 is authorizing the township to enter an agreement with Groove LLC for 3 creative arts camps for the summer of 2012. I move the approval.
Second by Lane. Commissioner comment, public comment, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Resolution 2012-46, authorizing the township to enter an agreement with U.S. Sports Institute for 2 multi-sport camps for the summer of 2012. I move the approval.
I'll second it.
Jim Higgins, second. Commissioner comment, public comment, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion
Aye.
passes 6-0.
Resolution 2012-47, authorizing the township to enter an agreement with World Cup Sports Academy for 3 basketball camps, 1 Olympic sports camps, 2 soccer
In July.
July camps. That's funny. And 1 tennis camp, 2 all-star sports camps, and 3 survivor nature camps. I move the approval.
Second. Lane, Shaver, second. All those in favor? Commissioner comment, public comment, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Passes 6-0. Thank
Tammy,
you.
are there any upcoming events you want to announce tonight?
Yes, a couple things I would like to announce. We do have registration open for Radnor Day Camp and the Summer Tot Lot Preschool Camp, so those are available actually online through an online registration system at our website at radnorrecreation.com, so we encourage folks to register early because those 2 camps do fill up pretty quickly. Also, we're going to be opening all of our summer registration on Monday, April 30th. So there is where our 38-page summer brochure will debut, and that will be uploaded to the website as well. We also have our annual Arbor Day celebration coming up on Tuesday, April 24th at 6 o'clock p.m. Folks are going to meet at the Radnor Trails Park, and the planting locations are to be determined out on the Radnor Trail. That's a collaborative effort with a couple of Cub Scouts as well as the Radnor Conservancy. We also are taking registrations for the annual Youth Trout Derby at Sawmill Park. That's going to be held Saturday, April 21st and Sunday, April 22nd. Those do fill up quickly, so make sure you come in and register for those in person. It is an in-person registration in our office. And we also have on Saturday, April 28th, the Clemacrone Park sign dedication ceremony. Time is to be determined, so look for information for that as well. And that concludes my announcements.
Thank you very much. That concludes the report.
Okay. Finance and audit.
We have schedule of bills payable disbursement list 2012-4A in the amount of $1,104,597.27. These proposed payments have been reviewed by the respective department heads, approved through the township purchase order process, and then verified and processed by the finance department. I'll move to approve this disbursement list.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Lane, seconds. Yeah, commissioner comments? Public comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes 6-0.
We have introduction of ordinance 2012-04, amending its Code of Ordinances, Chapter 5, Administration of Government, Section 5-52, disposal of township property by establishing a revised procedure for selling township property. John Rice or
Bill?
I'll go first, if that's okay.
Oh, Bill? Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
the administration worked with the solicitor on developing these recommended changes. As noted in the purpose and explanation section of the proposed legislative summary, the highlights of the changes include making it clear in the language that all sales of property, both real or personal, would require Board of Commissioner approval, whereas the current language as it exists now is not that clear. Extending the time period between when a bid is opened or when an auction ends and the approval by the board. Currently, it's 2 days. We've run into some logistical issues with that. If we'd have to schedule a bid opening to be, say, a Thursday before a board meeting, it's difficult to get the bids open, information put together, and a recommendation to the board in time for the packets to go out. So it's a logistical administrative issue. So extending that time period will be helpful. Establishing a baseline threshold for the estimated fair market value of real property to be sold. The current administrative code is not very clear on that. As a matter of fact, it really doesn't talk at all about real property. So we worked with the solicitor on putting some language in on that, which, as I understand, is consistent with the first or second Township Code. Increasing the baseline, revise the requirements for the public auctions to include online auctions. We feel that by opening this up and using the online auction feature, we open sales up to more bidders, which should help in driving up the price on the sale of these items. And then finally, to include a procedure for the sale of items valued less than what the baseline threshold is. So if we get a bid under what the threshold is, the current amendment includes language on how that should be treated as well.
Okay, any other staff comment? I'll move to introduce ordinance 2012-04.
Second, do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
I have two observations. They're both to do with the real property language as opposed to the personal property. And the first is, I think it might be useful to add a sentence somewhere in here about if that real property is park or open space land. And just acknowledging that there's another step to be taken under case law and the Donated and Dedicated Property Act.
Right.
So I just don't want future boards or future citizens or future Carfax to look at this administrative code, this is how you sell real property, and not be aware of it. I mean, last year we all became educated on that extra step you have to take in orphans court and whatnot. So I think it might be helpful to have this for future generations that are considering selling parks or open space to be just reminded that there's another step. It's not quite this simple. My second observation is Section 4 of the real property talks about we can accept nominal consideration in these particular cases, volunteer ambulance, nonprofit housing, et cetera. And I think there are cases now where we take less than fair market value in leases that aren't included in those cases. And I'm thinking of the mainline school night. But then I realized that Section 3 says this whole section doesn't even apply to them anyway.
Right.
So I guess it was a little confusing to me.
Well, what this is a compilation of what exists both in the first-class township code and the second-class township code for sale of real estate. You have nothing now currently in your charter or in your administrative code. So a couple issues came up over the last 6 or 8 months, and we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. This is operated all throughout the state. And the borough code it's almost identical language. There's some differences, but you're correct, Elaine. The first part of paragraph 3, they're all the exemptions.
Right.
And then 4, and that's in both of the codes. So
So it's just reiterating for those particular.
Right. That you can actually,
even though they're exempt, they can still.
You can actually take some money, through some nominal consideration if you think it's appropriate.
Okay. Thanks.
So do we have to amend to add that thing about the
Well, I think it's just introduction tonight. So the introduction would be this ordinance with, I will add the DDPA, Donated and Dedicated Act reference into, under the real property section. Not sure exactly where, probably under paragraph 3. No, actually under paragraph 1.
All right. So
just to make it clear, so if someone's looking at this, I think that's actually in one of the codes somewhere that we looked at, a reference to
So your
parkland.
ordinance will reference, your motion will reference that?
Yes, so I'll include that in my motion, that amendment.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Any other comments?
Yeah, I have 2 real minor ones. In A1, you mentioned that the bids shall be accepted and full price within 60 days. Shouldn't we condition that if that the commissioners can suggest a longer time or a different deal? Or as
you can change that. I mean, that is to make sure that once there's a bid accepted that,
Right.
you know, that it's not spread out forever. Now, payment of the purchase price, this actually has come up, cash, or can you take back paper on something like that? I've seen that done both ways under this code. It's been interpreted to do it either way.
Could we put something
Getting
like,
the mortgage
or
within
as
60
deemed
days or-
appropriate by the commissioners or something?
You can do that, but I think it's good to have an out,
Right.
you know, a date certain somehow.
And then it would force us by resolution or some other method to do it differently.
You know, if you want to modify that, if the board's wants to do that, I would say add to the end of that, or you know, such other terms as is acceptable to the commission.
Right, okay.
I mean, something like that, because sometimes you can't close a deal in 60 days. You know, and it has come up. I mean, there's ways that you can address that, but it does bind you a little bit.
And second comment I had, I mean, I know it's intuitively obvious, but the words aren't here, that there has to be public disclosure of who the buyer was.
Remember, your charter requires that you adopt an ordinance for a real estate transaction. So that's all got to be disclosed. When you sign an agreement of sale, that's got to be done publicly. So that's, I mean, there's these other steps that you're
Okay.
going to have where that's all going to be disclosed.
Thank you. That's all I have.
John, you want to incorporate that other one?
I don't have the language. What is the language we want to add?
We would be adding at the end of A1, John, at the last sentence, or such other conditions on payment of the purchase price as approved by the Board of Commissioners.
Okay, as stated by the solicitor, I adopt that amendment.
Any other commissioner comment?
Yeah, one question. In general, when we have things like this and we have dollar amounts, is it wise to have some kind of escalator or some kind of reference to the year in which we approve the document? And then in particular, would that be wise in this document or not wise, in your opinion?
Commissioner Curley, I would leave it as is. I mean, if it proves to be an issue in the future, you can always amend this ordinance. This is not the charter. I mean, this is the administrative code, so it's easy enough to, if we have issues with that, we can amend it.
Any public comment?
Yes, Jim Schneller, St. David's. I was wondering if there was any usefulness for use of the word sealed as to sealed bids. I don't know anything about that aspect. And also in Part A1, I wanted to point out that 10 days seems like a restrictive and a really unuseful time period. At least as for more expensive properties, 10 days doesn't leave any time for word to get out. And finally, if there was a highly regarded property, could you actually include language that be up to referendum, or that be treated a little bit more delicately?
Ellen's recommendation about the Deed and Dedicated Act addresses those things, Jim.
The which?
The Deed and Dedicated Act that we have referred to earlier has
Oh.
those kinds of requirements in there.
Great. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Call the question. All those in favor say aye.
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 Nays? Passes 6-0. Community Development, Don?
Nothing to report.
Public Safety?
Nothing on the agenda.
Library?
Oh, you know, I just have one announcement, which I made last time. I'm going to reiterate it. The one for the books fundraiser for the library is coming up Friday, the 20th of April, at the beautiful Ardrossan Estate. So if you are interested in going, please get on the library website, and you can download an invitation from there. And then also, I'd like to re-announce, I announced this last time, that we have an opening for the Township representative on the library board. So if you are interested in serving that position, please send your resume to Bob Ziankowski. Thank you.
Public Health?
No report?
Old Business? New Business?
Yeah, one thing, we had a community development subcommittee meeting. We talked about outdoor dining. So the subcommittee recommended to the board to address this issue. So the solicitor and our community development department are preparing an ordinance. So if you have feedback or input on that, now is your time to get that to your commissioners and/or staff. Thank you.
Public participation? Motion to adjourn?
I motion we adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Passes 6-0. Thank you all.